Morning. How are you all? You're more awake than I thought you would be. I cannot say the same for my lovely wife. You may notice that I am here solo for now. She's getting her beauty sleep. I, of course, woke up beautiful, but I don't have to put on makeup. So I have a little bit of an unfair advantage there. So welcome to day 2, Adopting Bitcoin, the Bitfinex stage. It's a pleasure to be back here. Can we have a round of applause for day 1, for our amazing organizers, for our sponsors? It is truly an honor to be here again with you all today. I learned a lot yesterday. I'm sure that everyone else did as well. I'm excited for today. We've got another very star-studded lineup. Probably people you know, some that you don't, some that you'll be very happy to see. Hopefully none that you won't. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but occasionally it just happens. So, to start us out, you know, most people like to think about Bitcoin as a store of value, a medium of exchange, perhaps someday a global unit of account. But our first speaker of the day, Akin Fernandez, he thinks about Bitcoin in terms of speech and how it can be used to extend the range of human expression. So Akin is the founder of Azteco, and he's going to give us a little breakdown today of Bitcoin and the way he sees it, again, extending this range of human expression of speech. So please give Akin a very warm welcome to the stage to start us off today. Here we go.
Thanks a lot. Buenos dias, everybody. So my talk today is called Country X. And what I want you to do is to imagine a country where you could live and pursue any software trade that you wanted to pursue, where there was no SEC telling you can't run a database on your own equipment. A place where you're free to experiment with software, offer services, and make a profit doing so. Is there a country like this on Earth today? And if not, what is the closest country to that imaginary El Dorado, for one of the description? What would the landscape look like? The people, what would it be like to live there and to run a software company there? Under what principles would it be governed? That's what my talk today is about. Let's call this imaginary country Country X. Now, how would Country X be governed? In Country X, governance is constrained to the proper service of the citizens, by their consent only as a direct result of Bitcoin being the only money. Country X, having adopted Bitcoin, cannot invade other countries, predate on the citizens, engage in foreign entanglements and shenanigans, but it remains absolutely sovereign and the ultimate authority over all matters of the state. Countries where arbitration is already an option for those seeking justice proves that the state is not required for that function, the function of dispensing justice, as is the example of properly armed private security replacing the police forces supplied by the state. Private companies taking over these functions removes these burdens from the state, putting them in efficient hands, leaving the state free to serve the people correctly. Private police forces are concerned only with the security of their clients, which is the people, and not enforcing arbitrary laws. In order to achieve this, survival-oriented nation-states must start accepting Bitcoin as a means of paying taxes. At Azteco, we're working on a project that could allow governments to collect taxes via Bitcoin. We have the pieces of this software developed. Citizens will be sent tax demands using paper or email, and these demands are fulfilled, confirmed, and accounted for entirely with Bitcoin, which has verification obviously built in. If you've all seen the workflow in miniature during this conference when you buy drinks at the bar or buy yourself breakfast in the restaurant. Governments accepting the transformative offer that Bitcoin makes to civilized nations must find a way to accept Bitcoin, and when they do, they'll find that they can charge very small amounts for many different services. But that's for another talk. So, is there a country like this now? Well, I'm sorry to report that there is not. Some properly led and future-oriented countries are taking the initial and risky first steps to get there and are rapidly accelerating.
Who rob life of its quality, who render rage a necessity, by turning countries into labor camps, modern slavery and drag as champions of freedom.
And are rapidly accelerating by accepting
Sinister and cynical instrument who makes the gun into a sacrament. The only response to the deification of tyranny by so-called developed nations, idolatry of ideology. North, south, east, west, kill the best and buy the rest. It's just spend a buck to make a buck. You don't really give a flying about the people of misery. Takes away everything it can get. Always making certain that there's one thing left. Keep them on the hook with insupportable debt. You see the paid off local bottom feeders passing themselves off as leaders. Kiss the ladies, shake hands.
Full understanding of the types of business models that are required to make Bitcoin ubiquitous, and it won't be some novel and strange thing. Everybody will understand what it is. And I think that's the only way it can make sense for an entrepreneur to put down roots for a tree that will only bear fruit after many years of cultivation and pruning. This is why, for example, the monarchies of Saudi Arabia are ultimately superior to any Western democracy. Because under monarchy, you have a guarantee of living without periodic auctions of the public and its purse to the crony capitalists. But don't believe me about any of this. If you want to be convinced, you need to read Hans Hermann Hoppe's Democracy, the God That Failed, which is a very good book about this subject, explaining why monarchies are superior to democracies. So, which country is closest to this ideal today? You can discover for yourself which countries are the closest to the ideal of country X by asking these very simple questions. Are there any laws controlling the use of Bitcoin? Are there any laws drafted by crony capitalists mischaracterizing Bitcoin as an asset? Are there any laws drafted by crony capitalists mischaracterizing Bitcoin as a commodity? Is there a politician who is just here to help, or bring Bitcoin inside the perimeter, or foment regulatory clarity, etc., etc.? And you know who I'm talking about when I talk about the politicians who've been saying these very odd and destructive things. Is Bitcoin treated in any way other than just another database? If the answer to all of these is no, then you're off to a good start. And of course, here I'm talking about the state of New York in the United States, where they've drafted this totally absurd bit license, which categorizes a database as something that's not a database, where you have to have $1 million before you can run a database on your own equipment. It's completely absurd and not a very good thing. And so contrary to the thinking of brainwashed people, regulation is not required to help people keep them safe or have an orderly market either. FTX has just proved this harsh lesson yet again. It's fully regulated. You couldn't get an account there without going through the KYC, AML, and everything else, and yet the whole thing was a house of cards and collapsed completely. Regulation cannot stop businesses from going out of service or going bankrupt. It's a false idea to think that regulation can help the public. Regulation is there to mediate in disputes, how disputes are solved between parties. It's not for keeping people safe in advance of disaster. These things cannot be predicted. So the fraud regulations that are on the books are more than enough to keep everyone safe. They cannot prevent disasters, and the people saying Bitcoin should be regulated are low IQ types who have no idea how anything works and who are very, very corrosive and dangerous to everybody in this conference, because these people literally have no idea what a database is, what a Bitcoin message is. For example, they believe that when you have a Bitcoin wallet, that you actually receive money on your Bitcoin wallet, and you and I know that this is absolutely false. An entry is made on the public database, and when that entry is made in the public database, the Bitcoin wallet shows you the allocation on the database against your key. So you don't actually ever receive Bitcoin or send it. All you're doing is writing a message that gets written into the public database. So what people normally ask is, well, how can that possibly be money? Well, it's not money. It doesn't have to be money to have utility. And so these explanations of how Bitcoin actually works under the hood are totally destructive of the ideas of the SEC, CFTC, FinCEN, and all these other people, and the other organizations in other countries that try and regulate what people do. They don't understand what Bitcoin is. Now, eventually they will, but in order for us to get there, we have to be left alone to be able to innovate. So, what would it be like to live in country X? In order to convince people that any of this is a good idea, you have to paint some sort of picture, even in rough outline, of what it would be like to live in country X. Almost everything in country X will be privately owned, including the streets, what libertarians are derided for with the Marauds taunt. The society would be, in fact, a natural society where there is a vestigial state and all the functions of the old fiat state are replaced by private companies and private ownership. The closest thing to this today are the free ports where no taxes are levied on goods coming in and out. Or the privately owned supermalls where a single entity owns a very large covered structured area and that's perhaps miles in diameter. These are the closest things to the free market society that you can see examples of today. And these places like that soup, I can't even remember what it is. It's a big mall chain that has different locations in Australia, the United Kingdom. You go into these places, they're absolutely wonderful, they're clean, they're safe, the security isn't there to bother you. If you extend this idea outside of these malls, then we start to get an idea of what it would look like. These are places where people live, play, work, and sell without being preyed upon. Now, these super malls and gated communities would grow in size until they touched each other, squeezing out the state almost entirely. It would be possible to move from one of these privately owned areas or sectors to another sector without ever setting foot on land owned by the state. And since these areas are policed by private security, whose only aim is the protection of people and property, crime is reduced essentially to zero, as arbitrary enforcement of laws or violent harassment by police is abolished. The massive, historic, and unprecedented influx of money and brains, people voting with their feet, will be due entirely to the Bitcoin revolution, the collapse of the dollar, and all fiat currency. And country X will become the most wealthy nation state in the entire world, a 21st century Venice of the Bitcoin age. And country X should never let any CIA-funded, screeching democracy promoter and his useful idiots lecture country X from afar that only their way is the correct way to run a nation or solve serious internal problems. When you're in a life and death war against well-organized and ruthless enemy, leaders of a nation-state should be expected to use their own means and powers to remove violent threats, and if that's the choice that they make. The idea that foreigners can enter a country and condemn its leaders for following their own path is appalling hubris and the root of the problem of global imperialism. The new imperialism is utterly despicable, and their sovereignty-dissolving narratives should not be accepted for an instant. Whatever country X decides to do with its sacred duty as a full sovereign is entirely up to them and not a matter for foreigners to decide, chide, complain about, or coerce. One thing is for sure. Anyone who is against a sovereign nation solving problems in the way that they see fit is very probably also an enemy of Bitcoin. You must bear this in mind when you hear people complaining about sovereign countries solving serious problems in the way that they think is correct. So, where does Bitcoin fit into country X? Bitcoin, the database in the synthetic money use case, which perfectly simulates sovereign sound money, will be a key factor in the rise of country X. Not only will using Bitcoin as a money and collecting it in taxes make country X a great place to live and prosper, but it will make the government of country X fabulously wealthy. We've seen this before with countries that have non-punitive tax regimes and that allow wealthy people residence. These countries will benefit from the inflows of capital, and with Bitcoin being the means of moving and protecting people's money, there's no need to rely on arbitrary bank secrecy laws to keep people's money safe from foreign thieves and predation. Bitcoin does that for you right out of the box for free. But what about the ordinary man who has every right to keep his money safe and who will inevitably be on the Bitcoin rails? Well, for that, there's Azteco, which will, without a shadow of doubt, be incorporated and running from inside country X. Believe it or not, the most crucial human element in the coming transformation is not the man who bought 11,000 Bitcoins. It's the ordinary person who uses Bitcoin as everyday money. In order for this to happen, getting Bitcoin has to be made trivially easy to both obtain and to use. And it must be used in a very particular way, which we call ethical Bitcoin. And here you can see somebody redeeming an Azteco voucher into the Pine wallet, which has one of the most wonderful consumer user interface interactions on the market. Absolutely fabulous. So if you haven't tried Pine Wallet, I suggest that you have a go at it. So what does ethical Bitcoin mean? Ethical Bitcoin means wallets like this: Samurai Wallet, Blue Wallet, Wallet of Satoshi, Pine Wallet, which you've just seen in action, Phoenix Wallet, Moon Wallet, Breeze, and Zeus. And you should be spreading the names of these wallets to everyone you know every chance you get. This is absolutely essential for Bitcoin to fulfill its promise where billions of people are using it, protecting not only the ecosystem of the stores and users, but making sure that Bitcoin becomes a fact of life, like WhatsApp and Telegram. That should be the goal for all Bitcoiners, to spread these wallets, and if you don't like these wallets, the wallets that you like, as long as everybody's using Bitcoin in some manner. All of these wallets will be fed by our Azteco outlets globally. This is a partial list of where we are live right now, and with the numbers of outlets we have in each. As I say, this list is not complete, and we're not finished adding to it yet, with some dazzling and mind-blowingly large integrations that are soon to be released. The fruit of all this business will flow back into country X, where Azteco is incorporated and taxed. And you can see here we have 26,000 in Mexico, 200,000 in Brazil, 200,000 in South Africa, and 6,000 in Canada, which should be coming online next week, fingers crossed. And so, those are my words on this subject. Country X is coming. It's a real place. Because Bitcoin it is absolutely inevitable. One day we'll all meet again inside the safe borders of Country X because it will be Bitcoin country. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.
Can we have another round of applause for Akin? That was fantastic. I think we all want to live in Country X, wherever that ends up being, but hopefully Country X is everywhere at some point. Thank you, Akin. That was fantastic.